Many analysts are arguing that the plan needs to push its submarines past the first island chain in order to seriously threaten U.S. access to China's littoral. Preparing for this would require increasing the tempo of the planned submarine operations, which would more often put China's boats in proximity with Japanese and American subs. To be sure, Chinese submarines are loud enough that U.S. boats should have plenty of time to get out of their way, but the same could be said of Soviet boats for much of the Cold War. It's easy to imagine an even more serious confrontation in the SCS. Another accidental collision would be bad enough, but if the scenario developed similar to that of the downing of Cal 007, with a Chinese fighter jet actually opening fire on an American plane, the situation could get ugly very quickly, and if an American pilot fired upon a Chinese plane, the reaction of the Chinese public could become too much for Beijing to reasonably handle. Recommended. Russia's battlecruisers could be a superweapon. Neither China nor the United States want war, at least not in the near future. China's military buildup notwithstanding, the People's Liberation Army (PLA) and its components are not ready to fight the United States. The U.S., for its part, would surely prefer to avoid the chaos and uncertainty that any military conflict with China would create. Recommended. A hypersonic arms race is coming. Nevertheless, both China and the United States are making commitments in the South China Sea that each may find difficult to back away from. Over the past 2 weeks, these commitments have generated a war of words that analysts of the relationship have found troubling. The key problems focus on China's efforts to expand or create islands in the Spratleys, which could theoretically provide the basis for claims to territorial waters. The insistence of the United States on freedom of navigation could bring these tensions to a boil. Here are 3 ways in which tensions in the South China Sea might lead to conflict. Recommended. Report. U.S. Army is now weak island hopping in the SCS. Over the past several months, China has stepped up construction of what observers are calling the Great Wall of Sand. This Great Wall involves expanding a group of islands in the Spratly chain so that they can support airstrips, weapons, and other permanent installations. It appears that Beijing is committed to defending these new islands as an integral parts of Chinese territory, a position that the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea does not support. Washington has other ideas, and has maintained that it will carry out freedom of navigation patrols in areas that China claims as territorial waters. The prospects for conflict are clear. If U.S. ships or aircraft enter waters that China claims, then Chinese sailors, soldiers, and pilots need to take great care about how they respond. A militarized response could quickly lead to escalation, especially if American forces suffer any kind of serious damage. It's also easy to imagine scenarios in which island building leads China to become embroiled against an ASEAN state. In such a case, a freedom of navigation patrol could put China in an awkward position relative to the third party. This first appeared in 2015. Excitable fighter jocks China and the United States have already come close to conflict over aircraft collisions. When a P-3 Orion collided a planned J-8 interceptor in 2001, it led to weeks of recriminations and negotiation before the crew of the P-3 was returned to the United States, and the plane was returned in a box. It's easy to imagine an even more serious confrontation in the SCS. Another accidental collision would be bad enough, but if the scenario developed similar to that of the downing of Cal 007, with a Chinese fighter jet actually opening fire on an American plane, the situation could get ugly very quickly, and if an American pilot fired upon a Chinese plane, the reaction of the Chinese public could become too much for Beijing to reasonably handle. Pages.